Hello, I'm Jane Norman and welcome to Capital Hill. Between now and question time, we'll be bringing you up to date on all the latest in federal politics on this second sitting day of the year. Let's bring in our first political panel for the year, the Leader of the Nationals in the Senate, Bridget McKenzie, and Shadow Finance Minister, Katy Gallagher. Thank you both for joining me today. Well, Bridget McKenzie, Craig Kelly is one of your colleagues in government. Was it right for the PM to haul him into the office this morning and say, you know, enough's enough on this COVID claims?
Well, I think we all need to focus on making sure we get the vaccine rolled out, that we get as many Australians taking up that opportunity and ensuring that we get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible to continue the great recovery that we as a nation have been experiencing when you compare us globally. Now, we live in a democracy and, people are entitled to their views. Obviously, Mr Kelly has released a statement, as you said. He is supporting the government's vaccine rollout, and I, like most members of Parliament, similarly support medical advice and people actually following medical advice, not just when it comes to COVID, but obviously with your health and that of your families.
But when you have this big public health campaign urging people to listen to medical experts, and you have, of course, the vaccine rollout about to begin, do comments like Craig Kelly's as a government member undermine those campaigns, that message?
Well, not at all. I think Australians are smart people. They take their medical advice from medical people. Science is contested. I support the fact that our scientists and our researchers, who are amongst the best in the world, and now have a lot of government funding behind them to be examining this particular issue. How do we best protect ourselves, our family and our society from COVID and from the symptoms, are encouraged to explore new ideas and to actually look at a whole raft of solutions, not just the vaccines we've got available to us right now, to make sure that we're looking at every possible opportunity to keep Australians safe.
But how comfortable are you to have one of your colleagues, Liberal MP Craig Kelly, pushing treatments for COVID-19 that our own health authorities have said are either not effective or discredited?
Well, Jane, I've been really clear. I take the doctor's advice. And I don't go to the doctor on Facebook.
All right. Well, Katy Gallagher, Labor had obviously been demanding the PM pull Craig Kelly into line. Are you satisfied with what's happened today?
Well, this has been a real problem for the government, I think, and for the country, really. We've got this really important vaccine program rolling out. We need the government to be on the same page, and what we've seen over months, it's not just in the last few days, is months, is Craig Kelly and some others in the government running a misinformation campaign, untested theories, protesting against lockdowns, protesting against masks, you name it. It's a problem, and it's a problem the Prime Minister should have fixed months ago and not allowed it to get to this point when you've got an MP brawling with another in the corridor, for the rest of the country to see at a time when we need people to trust the process and trust the information that's coming from Australian health authorities.
But are you satisfied, though, that the Prime Minister, we understand, according to senior sources in government, the Prime Minister has hauled him in and said, start, I suppose, promoting the government's official line on COVID-19?
Well, time will tell whether that discussion was successful. We understood there was one yesterday, and then there's been several doorstops since. The information on Mr Kelly's website and Facebook page and social media accounts, of which there are many, is all still there, all still arguing and contesting what Australian health authorities are actually urging the Australian people to believe and then undertake a vaccine program.
Before we move on to another topic, we've seen previously when Craig Kelly has spoken out about some of these issues that he has gained a lot of traction on social media, seen an increase in followers, there's been more engagement in posts. What's the risk here, I suppose, the calculation that Labor needs to make in terms of sort of drawing attention to Craig Kelly, that you might end up making a martyr out of him in certain pockets of the society?
Well, I think, certainly if you go to his Facebook, he argues that with his followers. He says, look at what's happened to me. I've got all these new followers because people have been picking on me. So there's no doubt he uses that as part of his engagement with his followers. I think from us, this is not a political attack. This is the most important thing. It's linked to our economic well-being, our overall health and well-being in dealing with a pandemic, is getting good information, trusted information that the Australian people believe and accept and follow. And what's happening is we've got some rogue MPs on the government side who are doing whatever they feel like, and it's taken months for the Prime Minister to stand up and rein them in. And time will tell whether it's actually been effective or whether tomorrow or tonight we'll see another post telling people, you know, whatever Mr Kelly and his followers believe.
All right, well, I wanted to move on to another topic. And just before, in his speech, Philip Lowe, the RBA governor, was asked about the job seeker allowance. At the end of March, it's due to snap back to pre-pandemic levels. Currently, it has a bit of a boost by way of the COVID allowance. Now, he said that the consensus in the community is that the job seeker needs to be raised, the rate needs to be raised, and that is his view too. What's your view on that?
Well, obviously the government's got some decisions to make around what to do with the job seeker and the multiple payments that those who are receiving that particular payment receive from government, for instance, rent assistance and the like, a whole raft of support structures rather than the base rate itself. So, you know, I'm hopeful that the government will take into consideration all of those factors when looking at ongoing support. But the reality is we were very, very clear at the start of the pandemic that we would be swift with our response, that it'd be targeted, and that's exactly what it has been. And that is, I think, borne out in the really positive results that the Reserve Bank Governor was speaking about today in his speech. Like, it has been successful. We also made the commitment that we would adjust our response as required throughout the pandemic, and we've also seen that. I mean, when you've got 15% of Australia's GDP has been focused on supporting Australians and Australian businesses through the pandemic, that's been majority heavy lifting, vast majority, by the federal government itself. And then you've got the cheek of state premiers, some, coming out and saying, come on, cough up more, when really we are all in this together. It's as a result of many state premiers' border closures that their own businesses are really, really struggling. And so they also need to support it. I'm not pointing the finger. It's just you can't always expect one level of government to pick up the tab all the time.
Yeah, but specifically on job seeker, I mean, throughout the crisis, we've seen the government and the RBA really work hand in hand on monetary and fiscal policy. To have the governor saying that he thinks the job seeker rate needs to be raised, that's, you know, a lot of weight behind that argument, isn't it?
Well, I'm sure the government will take that into account as they consider this going forward.
But you don't believe that if it snaps back to the pre-COVID levels, that is too low, that is an unfair payment?
Well, I believe that's a decision for government, and ministers have all the information available to them at the time that they make that decision, and so I'm sure they'll take that into careful consideration going forward.
Katy Gallagher, what did you think about Philip Lowe's remarks that he has joined the community consensus that the job seeker rate needs to be at least maintained or raised from what it was?
Well, I welcome those comments, and I welcome and I hope the government listens to them. He joins a raft of others. There's a lot of peak groups across the country, and of course Federal Labor have been saying for some time that $40 isn't enough, that this should be a permanent increase. This is, you know, starting to be bordering on, well, for the people who are living on that payment, 1.4 million people, and a bit more if you count in youth allowance, student and others, who are surviving on that payment, in 50 days they are going back to $40 a day. Some certainty needs to be provided. I think you have everyone, almost every stakeholder group that wages into discussions like this saying $40 a day is not enough. It needs to be lifted, and I hope that maybe with the governor saying this, that the government will listen. My own reading of the tea leaves from what the Prime Minister said on Monday and what Mr Frydenberg said on Sunday on Insiders was that they weren't looking to deal with job seeker in a permanent way. I hope they reconsider that. And
just before we have to leave, unfortunately, it currently is $715 a fortnight. It was $565 a fortnight. Would Labor be satisfied if it remained at that $715 level? That's about $150 extra a fortnight.
Well, what we've done is we've tried to give the government the room. As Bridget says, they've got the information, they've got the data, they've got the advice from Treasury, they're looking closely at what's happening in the economy, they're taking feedback from businesses about what they're saying in terms of you know, employment and getting people into jobs. You make the decision, you're the government. We're giving you the room to do that. We just want them to do that. But it certainly needs to be more than $40 a day.
All right, Katy Gallagher, Bridget McKenzie, we've run out of time, but thank you for joining the program today.
Always.
Authorised by Bridget McKenzie, National Party of Australia, Wodonga.